Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Good morning, Anna.
And good morning. Before we sort of get going and you sort of tell us a little bit more about what Edenred does and, you know, sort of the history and the story and everything, what struck you from that discussion just now? Is there anything that you sort of took away?
Yeah, in fact, what strikes me, probably it's three things. The first thing is, let's talk a little bit about France. Maybe you know that France represents 2% of the worldwide GDP, and in terms of CO2 emission, we represent 1%. We can be super proud of, you know, the level of sophistication we have in terms of reduction of carbon emission in France. The second thing that strikes me is the fact that carbon emission reduction is on its way, and as said by Louis, it's an exponential growth of the ability to reduce the emission. The number of companies are multiplied by 2 belonging to the SBTi, and to finish on a French nationalistic point, the French companies are probably among the most engaged around the world. So we can be really proud of what France and the French corporates are doing in terms of reduction of the carbon emission, and we can be super optimistic when we look at the exponential growth in terms of commitment to SBTi.
I do love a little bit of good French nationalism. It's
We need positive energy.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's great to highlight that. So tell the audience, what does Edenred do, and why are you here today?
Okay, so Edenred is a worldwide digital platform based on what we call specific purpose payment technology. We are connecting 60 million users to 2 million merchants around the world. To give you an idea, we are one of the leading digital platforms in the world. An element of comparison, Uber Eats, it's 80 million users around the world. So we are operating in 45 countries. We have 3 main business lines. The first one is what we call benefits and engagement. So probably you know our iconic product, which is a ticket restaurant. But ticket restaurant is only 40% of our total revenue. We are doing much more than that. We have some engagement solutions as well on our platform. Then the second business line is called mobility. So we are the worldwide leader of mobility around the world. So if you are in Latin America, you have access to our multi-energy card, but also some maintenance solutions, some fleet management solutions. And we have what we call corporate payment, i.e. the ability to pay digitally from one company to another. That's our 3 main business lines. We employ 12,000 people, and we are growing super fast. The Q4 2023 was the 6th consecutive quarter of growth that is above 20%.
Wow, that's quite a lot of growth. But tell me, where do your emissions sit?
In terms of growth or in terms of carbon emission?
Carbon emission.
Yeah. In fact, our ambition is to demonstrate that you are able to be economically performant, but at the same time to have a very ambitious roadmap in terms of carbon emission reduction. To give you an idea, we multiplied the size of the company by 3 in 10 years, and at the same time, in 4 years, the last 4 years, we have been able to reduce our carbon emission in absolute value by 14%. And the intensity for the last 10 years has been reduced by 60%. So to make a long story short, we want to demonstrate that it's possible to grow fast and at the same time to have, you know, an ambitious roadmap in terms of carbon emission, knowing that Edenred is part of the 5,000 companies that were quoted by Louis in terms of commitment to SBTi, and we are waiting, by the end of the year 2024, our approval as to our scenario to be carbon neutral by 2050.
And are those scope 1 and 2 emissions, so internal company emissions, or are those emissions in your supply chain mainly that you're sort of where the big part of your emissions?
Like, you know, my colleagues from Renault, L'Oréal or Capgemini, obviously we also have the scope 3, which is the trickiest one, but because it's tricky, it's very exciting, because as we all know, if you go alone, you go fast. If you go together, you go further. And so this part of the challenge is probably the most exciting one, i.e. the ability to embark the entire ecosystem to reduce globally the carbon emission.
And what are you doing to work with your suppliers and others to reduce your emissions, or even also your own emissions?
Well, in fact, thinking about Edenred, as I said, we have some suppliers, and so obviously in our purchasing policy now we are very picky in, with the people we want to work with, and especially our digital providers, because 100% of our solutions are now digital. We are on the cloud. We are the biggest user of API. So the effectiveness of our digital solution in terms of power usage is absolutely key from us. And we have been able, in fact, to have a ratio of 1.3 of power usage effectiveness. And we are still working on it because we would like to reach 1. So it's the conversation we have with our digital suppliers everywhere around the world. But then we have the entire ecosystem. As I said, we have 60 million users around the world, and we have, in fact, 2 million merchants. And we are very engaged with our ecosystem to change what needs to be changed. So, for example, right now, we are using our digital channels to make sure that all our merchants are aware in terms of what is the right food and to fight against food waste. So we started the journey at 20% of sensitivation. We are now at 70%. First thing. But there are many other things we are doing for the right usage of food. So, for example, we are the initiator of a program in Europe that is called Food, Fight Against Obesity. And we now have in our network of food more than 10 European countries that are helping us to push toward the right usage and the right quality of food. In terms of mobility, we changed many things. We are now connected to 500,000 charging points everywhere around the world, and we are moving very fast to the EV network and the ability to be connected to make sure that all our suppliers, but also our merchants, are proposing the right solution to our 60 million users. So it's everywhere around the world, and it's with many stakeholders. It's a high level of complexity, but when there is a will, there is a way.
And it sounds like you have a lot of different types of stakeholders with which you engage, different types of problems you're tackling, digital, mobility. What's the secret sauce to making that a success, to engage with such a diverse ecosystem and such a global ecosystem as well?
I guess part of the secret sauce first is a lot of humility. We know that it's inch by inch, step by step, so we accept to learn every day, we accept to fail every day, but we never ever renounce, to the ambition. And the ambition is to be part of the 700 companies around the world with a commitment to be carbon-free by 2050. So set a high level of ambition, whatever the difficulty of the path to get there, with a lot of humility, but also a lot of positive energy. I will say the second path to success is leadership, coming from the top, but coming from everybody among, the Edenred employees. We are now 12,000 around the world, and each of us, we have to make a difference. For example, I saw Julien, who is in charge of our website. Julien explained to me 1 year ago that by redesigning, the website, he was able to reduce by 50% our level of energy used for the website.
Wow.
Nothing has been asked to Julien. He did it alone because he really wanted to do it. So individual change, I will say, is the second, part of the secret sauce. The third thing is measure, measure, measure. If you measure, it's going to improve. So we measure many, many things. We have a program made of 10 different KPIs. It's called Ideal People, Planet, and Progress. And we measure on a quarterly basis. Measurement and action plan. I will say that's the other secret sauce. And then we need something bigger. We need something bigger. One day, during an executive committee, Douglas, who is in charge of mobility in Brazil, said, you know what? Together, we don't want to do it for SBTI. We don't want to do it because it is said that it has been done. We want to do it for my 2 grandkids. and he's a young grandfather. And each time we talk about those issues, i.e. every other week, we finish our conversation by saying, we want to do it, whatever the difficulty, whatever the complexity, for the two grandkids of Douglas. So to make a long story short, something bigger than us, the two grandkids of Douglas, a high level of ambition, measurement, and change, individual change. I gave you the example of Julien. I can talk about myself. I was coming from very far. Now I eat less meat. I use much more public transportation. So each of us, we can make one small step. We can be educated. We can take the time to educate the generation around us. If we do that, I'm absolutely convinced that our economies will be decarbonized in 50 to 75 years.
I really like that. What sort of can you personally bring to the story, and how can you make a little change? And if you make that little change and somebody else makes it, that, you know, that's two changes adding up to a little bit more. Just one sort of follow-up question on that.
And it's what Louis said, from a ripple to a wave. Ripple by ripple, it will become a wave, and we will do it.
Yeah, exactly. When you talk about the measurement piece, is that just carbon, or do you also start looking at other impact areas already?
Yeah, in fact, it's what has been said before me. Everything is integrated, so it's not only a reduction of carbon emission, but there are many other dimensions. So we define at Edenred 10 different KPIs in 3 categories. It's called ideal people, ideal planet, and ideal progress. And we try to look at all the interconnection between those elements. We measure each of them on a yearly basis, on a quarterly basis internally, with some action plans. And by the way, one thing I forgot about the secret sauce is we all need some carrots to move on. So at Edenred, in the free share plan, 25% of the free share plan is based on our ability to meet our target on those 10 KPIs.
There's nothing like a little bit of incentivization. Maybe talking a little bit more about the topic of mobility, because you mentioned that there's quite a lot going on in South America. And, you know, it sounds like you're already doing a lot. So, you know, really hat off to you. But I'd like to dive a little bit more into sort of the challenges that you're facing and some of the things which maybe aren't working so well. So maybe what are you doing in the space of mobility to combat, in particular, indirect emissions? And what are some of the challenges that you faced along the way to sort of also give the people in the room, you know, a bit of sort of, advice and hope as they embark on their journeys?
Okay, my advice is not to give advice, but having said that, just, you know, consider the scale of time. We started a journey in the US with a product that is called commuter benefits, i.e., if you don't use your car and you use public transportation, you receive digital money that can be used only to pay for the public transportation. When we started with that, everybody was laughing at us, saying, oh, you know what, Bertrand, you are crazy. It's in the US. Commuting is very important. People live in the suburbs. They go to work, you know, downtown. And the level of infrastructure is super low. Today, we have millions of users of our commuter benefits program. But it took us 15 years to get there. And it took us very crazy people, pioneers, to make it happen. We are doing now the same in France with our partner called Better Way. So if you are using the Edenred card, you will have access to, you know, a similar formula in France. So the first difficulty is to give some time to time. Yes, we have the pressure, we need to move fast, but it takes time. So let's never forget about the end game and accept the idea that to convert people, to change, you know, their habit takes time. I would say that's the first difficulty. The second difficulty is a question of infrastructure. At Edenred, we started with an energy card, so mainly fuel. But now in Brazil, a good chunk of what we are selling is the access to bioethanol. And ethanol, it's 90% less greenhouse gas emission than regular fuel. And then now we are in the EV charging. When you are using an Edenred card, you have access in Europe to 540,000 charging points. But when we are talking to the fleet manager, they are saying, okay, Edenred, good, but it's not enough. I have a problem of infrastructure. I don't know how to put charging points on my depot. So can you help us doing that? So we decided to make some major investments to propose a 360-degree solution. It's a lot of investment, but it's a lot of risk as well for us because the business model are not dry yet. But because economically speaking, we are doing well, we're able to invest and to be able to propose everywhere in Europe a solution to the fleet manager where we're going to take care of the installation and repair of the charging point, but also the ability to connect all the charging points to make sure that the fleet manager understands who is paying what and when, so measure, to be able to measure. But to do that, huge investment in the operating systems. And then we need one last layer, which is technologically very sophisticated, is via the cloud, the connection of all those things, and to have access to the report between conventional fuel, but also with EV. So it's a challenge for us because it's a journey. Nobody did it before us. We think we're going to succeed, but we don't know how long, how much it's going to cost us. But we will do it because we will never forget that we do it for the two grandkids of Douglas, even if they are in São Paulo in Brazil.
No, I think you said sort of keep patience, keep on going, and look at the end game. I think that was the second one you said. Think about innovation and where to invest. And anyone here who's got an innovative solution, he just told you that they invest in innovative solutions. So go find him afterwards and make him invest. Just side note on that. Final question maybe. You've been on this sort of journey and you're clearly doing a lot as a company. There are some barriers and sort of some things which are difficult on the journey. Apart from the two grandkids in Brazil, what gives you hope and what makes you continue on this journey?
Well, first of all, in everything that we are doing, there are some challenges. So I don't really see the value added of talking about the challenges. I want to talk about, every day, the positive things that are happening. And let me give you a few examples. We said food is very important in terms of CO2 emissions. So fight against waste, eating, the proper things, because you are what you eat, is another battle for Edenred. And I give you two examples. During the COVID, you had in England 1.3 million kids who had access to a proper meal every day thanks to the canteen. Unfortunately, due to the COVID, the schools are closed, so the canteens are closed. And Edenred employees in the UK, they're at home as well, due to the COVID. Then, magic is everywhere. Those employees were able to develop a specific program where, like a parent, you receive some money on your cell phone, but this money can be spent only to feed your kids. You cannot spend the money for something else. It took, days and nights for 4 weeks to put that in place. And they did it. My colleagues did it. So, yes, I can make the long list of the challenges. More important is a few individuals decided that 1.3 million kids needed to be fed properly, and they made it happen. I give you another example. In Romania, 300,000 old people did not have access to food anymore. For the government, it was impossible to go there and feed each of them. Crazy Romanian people from Edenred developed a program to feed those elder people. So yes, there are many challenges, but there are much more crazy ideas based on technologies and based on the individual willingness saying we will make it happen. So what makes me optimistic is, first of all, you and me, our ability to innovate and our ability to change what needs to be changed. That makes me, absolutely optimistic. The second thing that makes me optimistic is not only I'm the chairman and CEO of Edenred, but I'm also the board member of Air Liquide, these large industrial French companies, and also Neoen, which is the leading independent producer of green energy, so solar farm and wind farm. When I look at the technological evolution, i.e. what we are able to do today as compared to what we were able to do 5 years ago, yes, I believe that the progress in technology is part of solving the equation. Not only we cannot bet everything on the technological evolution, but when I look at what we are doing today, I'm super optimistic. And finally, I'm super optimistic about, the role France can play into that. When you think about it, and it's what I shared with my kids yesterday night, if you look at the Nobel Prizes, in this story of the Nobel Prize, France is the #2 country in the world. First country, US, second country, France. So the level of education, the level of research, the level of innovation we have in France, if we use it for the right purpose, France can make a difference. And France is our country, Europe is our nation, and we are part of one unique world. So based on what we demonstrated in the past, and based on who we are, I'm super optimistic on our ability to come with the right solutions.
Thank you so much, Bertrand. We're going to have to leave it at that. But
okay.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And thanks to all of you for joining. There's been many incredible insights shared today. The importance of integration beyond carbon, making it personal. Before you leave, I would encourage you to introduce yourself to your neighbor to see what they thought and to make some new connections to drive forward decarbonization. Thank you very much, everyone.
Merci, Anna.